Hi there. I think I'm not listed. Oh, I am listed as host. Sorry, I thought Bill was hosting today, so I got a little surprise there. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week, and sometimes we know what we're doing. And so I looked up. I saw Bill over. There's always been a problem. We have this thing on this board on the back, and host is the second thing on it. So I always look up and look at it, and I misread reader as host and host as reader because I read right to left or left to right. So anyway, and I've done that for years, and this time it caught me. So anyway, welcome to the show.
Hey, wait a second. Rumor has it that you have something special.
Yes, I was a little.
Everybody should be waiting for.
I was a little disoriented because I was trying to get this thing done before I get it all set up before I did it. So as you know, I really enjoy 5.1. I do a lot of 5.1, and I wanted to. But I wanted to be able to record. I want to be able to record in, some version of it, and really just stream with it. So we want to record to ambisonic in the field, but be able to stream to it from my phone. And this took a little bit of figuring out to get this working. So here's the rig as it stands. It's a little rough right now. So this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So what you have here. What you have in this little see there you go, see, so what this is a MixPre 10, and this MixPre 10 is set to ambisonic. It's an ambisonic input. So I've got this is the Sennheiser Ambio mic. So this has 4 outputs that come in here, and then the MixPres, the MixPre 6 and the MixPre 10. Ironically, not the Scorpio, but the MixPre 6 and the MixPre 10 can take this ambisonic and record it, but also turn it into binaural, and that binaural. So far, I haven't been able to find a way to get it to go out of left and right channels, but it will go out of the headphone jack, so you can hear it. The idea is that you can hear what's going on when you're recording from ambisonic. You can hear a binaural output. You can send the headphone jack out of the USB 1 and USB 2, left and right. So you can send those out of the USBs and plug them directly into the phone. So basically what happens is that you're getting a binaural mix that's a mix down from the ambisonic into the phone. And that means that, and so with Blackmagic, as long as the Blackmagic camera is set to stereo, it has to be set to stereo input, you'll hear binaural. If you plug it into the Apple camera, you immediately hear binaural. It just goes, oh, that's stereo input, and it represents it that way. So Blackmagic lent me this MixPre 10 to test this, and it took me a little while to get all the little pieces together. But this is what this little rig looks like. I'm going to try to shoot a couple things with it, and then I got to send back the MixPre 10. But I may get a MixPre 6 because the MixPre 6 can do the same thing. I asked for the MixPre 10 because I wanted to do the left and right outputs, but that doesn't. I haven't found that to work yet. So
somewhere in heaven, Rube Goldberg is smiling, but it does something that was not possible before. So that's very cool. And for all the binaural, I can imagine the deadheads in the day would have just gone crazy for that.
It's just that if you're shooting, what I wanted, and the last test before I send it back is that I want to see if it should just stream perfectly to the Voodoo camera. So the spatial camera from because the idea is if I'm shooting spatially, it'd be really great to hear it spatially as well. So that's the last little thing that'll happen, and then it goes out. The one thing that I want to have, and of course the request that I'm going to make, is being able to add more channels down the center and have it be reinterpreted so that I could do the same thing we do for some of the other streams that we do, which is that you have a surround mix, but I'm finding a way to mix in. If we're already converting to binaural, could other channels be defined as the center? And the reason that would be useful is I could have handheld mics that are going into the MixPre and being dropped right into the center so I can have people talking, but you hear the atmosphere. That's what we do with some of the other mixes that we're using.
Center channel for voice and everything else for surround.
With this, you can't really do what we do in surround because you need to have some control of who's going down the center channel. And so that would be the only interpretation that we'd love to see added to it. That would allow us to use this for that kind of thing. But either way, it's pretty slick.
So nice.
So that's the and I now that I said that, I may have a way to hack that. So we'll see we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's a fun little tech that thought people might enjoy on a Wednesday. Next question.
First one this morning comes from Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And Francis says, the Blackmagic Design Ethernet 360 switch finally arrived. Does anyone on the panel plan on adopting it?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for me, just as someone who's had to deal with Blackmagic equipment for the past 15, 20 years, my personal experience has been that since they started making live production equipment or bought a company that did live production, manufactured live production equipment and grown from there, the reliability and the build quality of their products have gone downhill in my experience. Back when they were just known for deck links and HDMI to SDI and SDI to HDMI converters, they were sort of like the go-to affordable brand. They made good products, but my point of view of Blackmagic at the moment is that their products haven't been the most resilient and reliable. Them entering this new market, I would consider them an infant in the networking world, as a company who only fairly recently understood how to get FTP working on products that they've marketed as capable of FTP for like a decade. I wouldn't go with Blackmagic for IP networking products. I would go with a company that's done it for decades. Cisco. I would even pick Netgear, despite their issues with power supplies, and even Unify, despite the downsides of their product line. I would pick them over someone like Blackmagic for IP.
Yeah. So this is why you watch the show. So you have Mickey's view of it. I built an entire company on Blackmagic hardware. so like I probably have over a 10-year period about $1 million worth of Blackmagic hardware at least, and I'm about to buy another $1 million in next week. so I definitely and I do agree with Mickey that you have to be careful of what you how you use the Blackmagic hardware. It's not the same as, like one of the reasons that our trick was that we knew what it could do and knew what it couldn't do. And that we also took very good care of the gear because it wasn't going to handle a lot of beating. Now, I will say that I think that the Blackmagic hardware has gotten a lot better. The live hardware has gotten a lot better over the years. They've had more time to work on it and figure it out. So I have, and again, there's huge parts of my pipeline that are all Blackmagic, and it's worked fine. I think if you treat it like a Grass Valley, system, it won't last very long. But that's an entire order of magnitude more expensive. So what really Blackmagic did was allow us to get to an ownership model instead of a rental model for a lot of our productions, which is what again built the foundation of everything I did for a long time. And so what I will say is the Ethernet switch. I mean, everybody talking that does 2110, is kind of surprised that this switch can be as inexpensive as it is. It is designed. This isn't designed to run your office. This is really a 2110 switch that's built around that. And I think that it took some time to come out, probably because they're trying to make sure they got it right. They can't have it not right. That said, with any company, including Blackmagic and Apple and others, when someone comes out with a product that they've been working on for a long time, I'd be careful of buying it right out of the gate. I remember buying Sony EX1s of Sony. I bought the first, 3 out of the first 10 EX1s that came into the country, because I was pressing down on Sony to send them to me. And, they were pretty buggy. they weren't broken. They were just never quite right. And so I think that you may want to wait for a minute and let the gamma test go out, as we would say, and let people do it and see if they find any glitches. There's probably going to be a 0.1 release. And if you want to live on the edge, then go get one, because you'll be right on the front and you'll get to see it. You'll learn things because you'll learn what doesn't work, and what does work. But sometimes it's easier to let other people take those arrows. So I would probably wait a little bit. Also, you have to decide your entire pipeline or much of your pipeline is going to go to 2110. Now, I will say that a lot of people in the industry say that this switch is probably going, if it's successful and if it's stable and if it works, which we don't know until it gets out into the field at scale, it will roll 2110 into many houses, because the switch, that infrastructure there, combined with all the other things that Blackmagic does, kind of finally puts together an entire package that a smaller organization could piece together. And so we expect to see a lot of these go out. I just don't know if the first 100 are the ones that I'd want. So I think that I'm not ready to move to 2110 yet, but we're getting closer. So we're going to watch this very intently. And I think it's an exciting box. But again, any box that comes out that is brand new technology for a company and it's a brand new piece of hardware, I'd give it a little bit of time.
Francis Fry comes up next from Cambridge, Massachusetts. The Blackmagic...
that was the last one.
I'm sorry. Alan Heath released the SQ Rack. Could you see it fitting into applications where you'd use an X32 rack? And he's got a link there to the piece.
Go ahead, Marty.
Well, yeah. So Alan Heath came out with the SQ Rack, which is a rack version of the SQ series of mixers. Basically looks like another rack mixer like the X32 Rack, but it really was intended, I think, to compete with Behringer's new Wing Rack. There it is, the Wing Rack, which has many similar features. It follows the Wing physical mixer rather than the X series of mixers. The Wing is way more capable, more flexible. The Wing Rack is selling for $1,600, whereas the SQ is listed at $3,000. The workflow, if you are familiar with and appreciate the SQ workflow, you will find it very familiar. I am not a particular fan of it, having worked with it now for a few months. At one venue that I'm at. I think the Wing is a lot more flexible and it's going to be a lot less money too.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. So for me, when I see this, it actually more is in the price point of like an M32 rack. So I would actually kind of like hold it more in that place. And I mean, I would say like quality wise, you're going to probably get right in the ballpark with these different units. But the real thing that is a concern to me is that Midas, which is owned by Behringer, they like restructured heavily and they kind of cut off all their distributors. You could only get stuff through Sweetwater, and that was very limited. So I would actually be really I'm kind of staying clear of buying anything from them because it's been really hard to get repairs and to get new parts for things. So that alone already kind of just scares me a bit. But yeah, I think that this is absolutely, I mean, these rack mount mixers, the whole concept of these things is you can throw them in a corner. There's iPad software. You can be around the room. You can have some flexibility to go on stage, tweak monitors, all that stuff, and be able to kind of maneuver where you don't have like the tactile control that you would on a big console also eating up all that real estate. So,
go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think in situations where you need something relatively affordable, like if you take a look at this, it's a 48-channel mixer, $3,000 US. That's less than $100 US per channel, like, you know, in the sub $300 US per channel range. I think I would consider that on the more affordable side of things. I would certainly pick, if I had to rely on analog circuitry, I'd certainly pick this over anything that's Behringer, like knowing that Behringer is typically noisy, high jitter, converters in them. So I wouldn't pick an X32 rack by choice or use one by choice. But if I'm in the situation where I can make a decision on something that's rack mountable, a rack mount mixer, then I'd go with this rather than a Behringer product.
Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand wonders, Ibanez has released a new guitar cable which suggests a better, quote, higher resolution audio curve. One for our resident audio gurus. Is that hype, or how would synths specifically be affected if you used this? And he's got a link.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so here's the thing, is that like there's only so much reinventing the wheel that you can do. This is a guitar cable, okay? This is a high impedance, unbalanced cable, man. And so I've spent $8,000 on a cable before. Sorry, I'm getting loud. And this is the real, like the real thing is that there's a lot of ways. Marketing is amazing. Look at Apple. Most of
But
the
it's
stuff
gold. Is it gold plated? That's all I want to know. Is it gold plated connector?
Gold.
Unobtainium
It's not even the best conductor. So it's like a lot of this.
12 gauge.
It's
gold
really
plated.
So as
Just use your jumper
Oxygen
cables.
infused.
just really understand how these things work. There's a hot and a cold, okay? A high impedance, unbalanced cable loses quality and signal and just power overall after about 15 feet, okay? Which is why guitar cables are typically shorter. It's just that. I mean, when you actually like start upgrading these things and you're balancing them, wrapping them in copper, they get more. But a guitar cable's a guitar cable. There are dead patch cables. I don't know if you guys have seen these, which really Billy Corrigan had me buy these for his coffee shop venue, which really drastically can cut down people just unplugging their instruments and kind of killing the pop, which is kind of a cool thing. But I would say use high quality stuff, guys. Go into a DI and then you're hitting XLR. For me, I try, if I have high impedance cables, I want the least length possible. Get it into a DI, get it into low impedance XLR. You're done.
I have an idea for a product. We shouldn't make it. We should just market it and see how many people go in the pre-order, which is a fiber guitar cable. So we talk about that we have fiber connectors on either end, and simply it's glass in between. You have all this trouble with the short cable, and this one, most guitar cables go 10 feet. This guitar cable can go up to 7 miles.
Require a motorcycle battery to power it.
That would be, and it's perfectly clean. It will pick up no information, because it's, anyway. I think we should some CG animations, some stuff, and put it on YouTube, put on a link on, see how many pre-orders we get. Go ahead, Mitti.
Yeah. For me, like, Tim mentioned in the chat, copper is copper. Yeah, I'll stick with my Mogami Nutric connectors. And yeah. Perhaps if people are thinking of investing in these cables, maybe spend the money on better guitar or better playing, perhaps.
I mean, there is some certain level of guitar cable that is good. Like having a solid piece of equipment. It doesn't, but it stops pretty quickly as to what's there. I know that my daughter. I bought her a better guitar cable for hers, and she carries it around everywhere because she doesn't know what someone's going to hand her. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, like you say, it probably could do the quality of the sound that comes through probably is not going to be affected. Maybe the durability of the cable might be important. The durability of the shielding on the cable, because, as you're walking up and down the stage doing that duck walk and imitating all your favorite guitarists, the shield's going to break eventually, and then you're going to have hum and noise, and there goes all your super high efficiency spectral reproduction of your guitar. Plus, if you pay all this money for this ion implanted chrome plated copper tips, and then you spill a little beer on that connector before you plug it in, and hey, the sound goes out the window. So it has the shielding has a shield one is semi-conductive. Why do they put a semiconductive shield in there as number one, and then a braided shield as number two? So it could help eliminate a little hum if the shielding is much better than anything else. But I don't think it's going to increase the spectral quality of the sound that's traveling.
Good, Bill.
You're making me miss that one of the audio magazines back in the day used to do, in one of their issues, the iLurpa reviews, and they would make up an audio product. And of course, iLurpa backwards is April 1. And so it was always their April Fool's joke, but it was so much fun to read. And I think we need to bring that back to the internets.
I think that Viber guitar cable would be a great one for April 1.
Perfect example.
He's got to start working on the animations. Go ahead, Marty.
That's a great idea, by the way. So there are some differences in cable quality and construction, especially when you're dealing with high impedance circuits like instruments and guitars and stuff. And the difference is, well, copper is copper, but what surrounds the copper between the core copper and the shield, that insulation can make a real difference, because as the wire moves, it's possible for the conductors to move as well. And the insulation needs to be really, really quiet to kind of reduce the capacitive coupling between the shield that goes around the core copper. And so some of the higher end cables use a special insulation, and in addition to the insulation, it will be wrapped with another layer of protective material to allow the shielding conductors to, if they move independently without creating any magnetic or conductive noise between the two. That's why you have like platinum cables versus standard cables, and really go into and read the product descriptions and the specs from different manufacturers. And Mogami is one of the top manufacturers. I don't know this other company. Well, we know Ibanez, but I don't know if Ibanez is actually making this wire or if they're OEMing it from some other manufacturer that could be making the same wire for a different manufacturer as well, and brand, just putting another brand name on it. So, read the information on the product and judge for yourself.
Go ahead, Chris.
You're muted, Chris.
Sorry about that. It didn't.
Yeah, he was testing the cable.
I was just saying, just for clarification, that shielding is the copper that would be a balanced cable. So guitar cables are not shielded. Just so everybody understands what we're talking about. So.
Good, Bill.
I just wanted to say, I mentioned it, and it's back. The Lurpa Labs reviews are back as of 2024. This is the Lurpa Labs Noah's Ark turntable. So somebody has brought back that old traditional classic punster-filled thing, and it's real.
It's by the way, $70 Canadian, probably. I don't know what it is. That equals American for the GL10. This cable. So $70. You know that the market is. Some artist is going to say, "Just get me the best cable," and someone's going to go out and say, "Well, what's the most expensive cable?" And they're going to go buy this one. So I think that's the market there. Next question.
Next question comes to us, Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. And Mike wonders, morning, everyone. How reliable, far of a distance, specifically, can I push the Bluetooth connection of the Radial BT-Pro? The audio chain is phone to BT-Pro to an M32 to speakers in-house.
Good, Mickey.
How reliable for something mission critical, and I think something that would be heard by the public or by the audience is mission critical. I'd say 0 because it's Bluetooth.
Go ahead, Marty.
Well, just looking at the product information, there are two versions of the BT-Pro. The BT-Pro itself is rated at 60 feet, and the BT-Pro 2 is rated at 100 feet. And this is pretty typical of Bluetooth devices. The transmitting chip that they have inside of them, there's a couple of different grades. There's the long-range grade, and the shorter range grade. So there you have the two products. But this is a module that goes on the end of an XLR cable, and so you can stretch the XLR cable and bring it closer to where your phone is, and increase your distance that way.
Yeah, I would say that I would agree with Mickey in the sense that if it was important, I'd find a way to wire the phone to something. There are plenty of ways of getting audio out of a phone, and I would find it. For those, if it was important. If it can fail a little bit or it could break up, I'd give it 10 feet. Like that's as far as I would take a Bluetooth connection to for anything in front of more than 20 people. Like that. And if it mattered, I'd wire it. Next question.
It is a 2.4 gig, system like Wi-Fi and many other things too. So.
Which is why we don't want to use it if it matters.
Right.
so we don't want to use Wi-Fi when it matters either. Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Is there a small mixer like the Behringer with automixer or Dugan that can be controlled over a VLAN? I have multiple concurrent ballrooms with Zoom presenters.
Go ahead, Marty.
Well, I would first recommend the Allen & Heath CQ product line. There's 4 models in this, different numbers of inputs. One of them is a rack-mounted tablet version only. They're relatively, they're well priced. They can do 96 kilohertz. They are small. They can be controlled by a tablet or the mixing station desktop app. So I think that would probably be your best bet. And they do have auto mixing on all of the channels.
I'll go with Courtney.
I was going to suggest the Zoom F6 and the F6 control, which is the remote control that runs under iOS for it. It does have auto mixing. It's fairly cheap, fairly compact. The problem is, I think that F6 control, that's a picture of the control panel. You can control all the functions of that mixer remotely over iOS, but it only connects, I believe, over Bluetooth. So I don't think you'll be able to remote in over Ethernet to distant. If those mixers were in each ballroom for your situation, I don't think you'd be able to have Bluetooth range to be able to hook into multiples at the same time.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it depends what you would consider as small. If you take a look at something like the Yamaha QL1, that's a relatively compact board that has a good amount of channels of Dugan, depending on how you arrange your FX processors. Along the same lines, if you take a look at the current generation of Yamaha boards, the Yamaha DM7C is the compact version of the DM7 family, and that's relatively small as well. If you want something like really tiny, or probably something rack mount, you can take a look at there are DSP processors from the likes of BSS or also Symmetrics that have auto mix engines built in, or on the half U size of things. Shure also has some auto mix engines that are designed for conference room use, and you can feed a bunch of mics into it that does the auto mix and then spits a mono or a stereo mix feed out of it.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of those where we do multiple rooms, and I have to admit that what we used was an X32 rack. so it was sitting there. We gave the because we were connecting via Ethernet back to a home base, so all those feeds came back to us. And we had multiple laptops all set up so that I was trying to find the picture of it, but we had Brian Maddox would have a bunch of laptops all up, and he could see every mixer and be able to control it. At the time we were doing it, I think that was really the best way to do it. We learned we gave some control to we have to hire in a facility. You have to hire an A to move the mixers. It's a union thing, so they're all there. Those connections may or may not have worked all the time, so that we could keep control of what we were doing. But anyway, the racks work pretty well. Next question.
Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. Up next, DPA Microphones has acquired the majority share of Vienna-based Austrian audio. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, DPA is like the best. So I'm sure that anything they're doing is probably a really intelligent decision that will be a really great quality outcome. And anything they make, I'm absolutely buying and using and fully trust.
Good, Marty. Can't hear you, Marty.
Sorry about that. I believe that Austrian audio was born from by engineers of another famous microphone manufacturer, and had some very, very excellent products. Corporate acquisitions like this happen for one of two reasons: either they want to acquire the technology, or they want to quash the competition. So depending on what DPA does with this, for the marketplace, for us as consumers, it may or may not be a good thing. DPA does make excellent product line, no doubt. So did Austrian Audio. Let's see what they do with it.
Next question.
Alton Christensen in New York, New York. As a fellow who started in the analog-only days, I find this an interesting take on this mainly fast digital world, and he's got a link there to a YouTube video.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I confess I did not watch the video, but this is like just the biggest and oldest talk ever. And people have always used the best means possible to record and mix and process audio, okay? The only option not that long ago was analog tape and analog studios. The audio, it just progresses and develops. So every year is like 10 years in audio. It's amazing at how quickly this goes. And so for me, my digital workflow if I had to choose, there's no way it would be analog. Like I couldn't, I just can't work that way because I would lose work. I'm working on so many different things in a single day, in a single hour, maybe bouncing around that in an analog environment, it's not conducive at all. So I encourage people to definitely work the way that is most comfortable and inspiring. I have some analog stuff in the back you can see, and I love it very much, but it is probably the weakest point of what I have because it's the only thing that I have to actually chart and go back and tweak that doesn't just load up with a button, and that takes time, and time is money in this and all that stuff. So yeah, love the digital.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, there may be one one thing that analog recording has over digital, and that may just be the better tape saturation, distortion, ease of noise. But you can emulate that in digital these days, and I wouldn't trade that little tiny improvement or little tiny sound difference over all the convenience of not having to deal with, azimuth alignment and crosstalk and tape noise and punch-in problems and punch-out problems and all those problems of dealing with analog multi-track recording are much, all those things are eliminated with digital recording, and it's not worth that little bit of tape saturation.
It sounds like Courtney, in this case, might have a little PPSD, that's post-production stress disorder, related to that. When people start repeating all the things that possibly go wrong, there's a little PPSD going on there. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I did skim through the video earlier, and one of the things the presenter mentioned was the ability to like lock yourself and commit. I myself would love that, and the types of work that I do. I do TV shows, films, advertising, corporate videos. I would love to just like commit to something, but who's scared of committing? The directors, the producers, and the clients and the artists. They do not want. They do not like to commit. They can't. Most of the time, they're trying to read each other, try to see like without directly asking the other stakeholders what they want. So they try to make decisions, and then the next day they change their minds. The next day, let's put another let's tweak something. Let's remove this line. Let's throw in it. Let's record a new VO line. People are with the current way the industry is. People are afraid to commit because they don't want to be locked into a certain way a production is done or a certain way the content is produced. So that's certainly something that the last studio I had before this facility, we had 3 SSL desks. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on them. We tried to incorporate them into our workflow in mixing shows, mixing tracks. It ended up in the long run just being, a whole bunch of nice preamps and then a fancy controller / keyboard stand.
Very expensive. Go ahead, Marty.
Okay, so I'll be dating myself, but having worked in recording studios as far back as the 1980s, recording on tape is a whole different workflow for an artist, for a musical artist, than recording into digital. It's a completely different mindset, and it really forces you to be well rehearsed by the time you get into the studio, because studio time was and still is expensive, and tape is expensive. But the results that you get are a very particular sound that tape has. Now, yes, Tape can be emulated, but which emulation do you want to use? There are dozens of tape emulation plugins out there, and why not just use the real thing? And then once you have your tracks recorded, then you can dub them off to digital to post-process them. It's a particular workflow that serious artists do appreciate, or some serious artists do appreciate that kind of workflow and that kind of commitment, as Mickey was saying, and just the physical presence of holding your product in your hand, holding your music in your hand. That 2-inch tape is just a visceral piece of your representation of your work. It's a very different feeling.
Go ahead, Courtney.
People in the analog days of recording, artists, don't realize it, but they probably spent a quarter of their careers waiting for rewind. And just think how much more productive you could be if you had all that time sitting in the studio waiting for a rewind and a playback of that in real time.
I hesitate to say this, and I won't mention any names, but I did work with a studio that did everything digitally, but had tape things rolling when they hit roll. They had tied it all in, and they would print it out and hand them back the tracks on tape. But they were like, "Yeah, we're not actually recording on that." like that just makes everybody feel better. So anyway, next question.
Next one comes to us from Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, in this interview with Adrien, Brody, and Jason Schwartzman on the A24 podcast. At the beginning, there's a super awkward moment with someone doing a slate. Why wouldn't they slate before the actors arrive? And he's got a link there to the clip.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, there's a good reason you're burning media all that time, but from the slate to when the actors start. And if they come in and go, "Oh, how's your wife? Oh, I want to talk to you." And they may be talking about stuff that they don't want recorded. So the slate tells the actors, and these two actors are, and here's the slate we're talking about, just a regular film slate going in there with time code. And you want that time code to match as closely to the beginning of the program as possible, because there has been known things like drift. And the longer it runs from that head slate, the longer the possibility of drift. And both these are professional actors are used to film slates all the time. And that tells them that, hey, we're rolling now, ready to record, and you can begin. So there's several purposes to that slate other than just marking sync.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, just to add to what Courtney said, which was a lot of times these actors, like as Courtney mentioned, like they start to chit chat about small talk, daily life kind of things, and then they start to, without warning, start to talk about what they're actually meant to talk about in the interview. They go right into it without cameras rolling yet. So the production starts to scramble and say, quietly signal to each other, roll, and then of course you have to get that slate in there. At that point, they're already in the middle of conversation, as it was in this podcast, when the slate comes in and the sticks are clapped.
Yeah, we really definitely found a very syncing the whole crew, even if you don't need the slate, syncing the whole crew. And we also, when we're in an edit, we always make sure that the slate is in frame when we start rolling the camera. So the slate is in there, we roll the camera, because then at the head of every clip, we see what clip is that. And so that was very important. But as been mentioned before, having a big leader after that is really, even if it's not, even if it's just digital, it's a lot of time that everyone has to deal with to try to find where things actually started. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Chris in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A local organization would like to record and or possibly stream a 1-hour event with 2 speakers. What is the most foolproof way to record decent audio and stream? Any single social platform is fine. Rode Wireless and my iPhone on a tripod, perhaps, and you can spend around $200 US.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, with something like this, I'd probably look into $200. Yes, you can't. It's hard to do anything much with that, but I'd probably look into getting a small handheld audio recorder that can also act as an audio interface at the same time. This is a little Tascam Portacapture H6. I think it's about $300 US. Can can record up to 4 channels, and also do some sort of mix with it, with mixing the 4 channels and adding very minor EQ and dynamic range control with some compression in there. And I would never, for anything that matters, I would never use something that is any cheap wireless. So probably recommend this a Countryman B3 that is wired, so that you don't have to spend for a wireless system for this. It's just a regular old B3 with an XLR connector on it that you can use just a regular old XLR cable, plug it into your audio interface. Going back to the audio interface there, I think Alex also has used ones from a company called Saramonic. I haven't used them myself, but they're pretty darn affordable.
They're affordable. They're a little noisy, but they're solid.
Yeah, I would, these Tascams, of course, preamp wise would not compare to something from Sound Devices or Yamaha or any higher end audio preamp or microphone preamp. But I would say they're decent quality. I'd probably compare them to something along the lines of the Zoom audio product line. One thing I would say though is if it's something that the client might not have the budget for, I would personally do themselves a favor and tell them that it might affect their credibility and their brand if they put out a live production or a production at all that's of subpar quality. There might be connections made between I can't understand these people because of the audio. Subconsciously, people might think that, and then link that to this might be a company that I can't understand how they operate, what their products do. I'd rather not put out a bad show than I'd rather not put out a bad show than put myself out there with really, really bad production quality.
Yeah, I mean, they say audio is half the show. It's really about 70-80% of the show, especially when people are talking. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I mean, in short, there's first off, $200 is, in the most loving way, you pretty much just have money for like lunch for the crew. Let alone to actually rent and hire out a team of production stuff. It's just not really feasible for that. So what I would say, I'd be looking at things like, can you find someone that literally has a laptop and a small interface with a couple channels that you can get some wired mics and run into, and maybe just run that directly into your streaming software, something like that. Because I think that a lot of these situations, they just require a real conversation. And it's somebody wants to hire you to do this thing. Ask them, in your mind, when this thing is done, is it good? Because this is not going to buy that. And so it's just a matter of really being really thorough, having good communication, and look, I'm going to the audio dealership. Yeah, I want this. No, I only have $200 with me. This conversation's only going so far. You know what I mean? And that's just the real answer. And I know I suggest a lot of really expensive solutions, and the stuff behind me is really expensive, and that's all fine. I don't have to have this stuff, right? And I think that there's people really, really have big misconceptions in audio. Have the least amount of gear possible with the best stuff that you can get, no matter what you're doing, unless you have some exorbitant thing. And this is me and my buddies who are all building pretty sweet mix rooms with really, really high echelon artists. This is what we're all doing. We want this to be a really streamlined thing. If you can't afford really good wireless, you cannot afford wireless at all. Bad wireless is still really expensive, and kind of all audio is, and all video is. So it's just, you get what you pay for. So don't try and get a lot. And that's my real best advice for anyone. Try and get a solution that will really work. And if the thing is not going to work, have that conversation. I have that talk with people all the time, and just say, don't even try this. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to cost some money, and then it's going to be really bad when it's done. And it's just going to end up into a lot of work to try and repair something that just wasn't done properly. So that's my spiel.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, my advice is phone a friend. Find somebody that you know, because it's really not the equipment. I mean, there is a lot of equipment. Mickey mentioned one. This is the old Zoom H4n. You can probably find one of these used somewhere for $75 or something like that, and then find a couple of mics. But it's not about the stuff. It's about how someone uses it. What you really want is someone who's experienced and can go to a live event and understand what's going on. And, you may be able to find a friend or a friend of a friend or a friend of a friend of a friend who does this enough and they want to get in on this and enjoy working with you on something, and that's a much better way. It's the brains of the people doing this stuff that gets good results, not the physical equipment they're using. I've always said that a lousy pianist playing a Steinway or a Bosendorfer doesn't entertain your friends any better than Elton John would on a bar piano. It's the talent, it's not the stuff that makes this work.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't know, Bill. I've heard a kitten on the keys of a Bosendorfer, and it's a lot better than some of them.
Was it amazing? Was it amazing? It was
The low notes are just amazing. Rattles the speakers. I was going to suggest, you said for record, possibly streaming. And I agree with Mickey, wireless mics are kind of a danger when trying to stream, especially these cheaper 2.4 gigahertz like the DJIs. You're not going to get close to any kind of decent microphones for $200, but these have fairly decent microphones. And the thing about this is they locally record. They record at each transmitter 32-bit float, so that covers you for post production and not for live stream. If you get a hit on your wireless mics and keep the receiver close to them, this would give you two people. And you're still $50 over your budget. So I don't know how you do it on that budget, but that would be probably the cheapest to get you two fairly decent recorders, fairly decent microphones built into those. I would use a separate lavalier to look a little cleaner if you can, but that's going to put it way over your budget.
Marty?
I have these kinds of value conversations with small and medium houses of worship all the time. How important is communicating with your audience to your mission and to your organization? If it's important, then the ability of to do effective communication is then important. Inexpensive equipment, doing things on the cheap, it may work until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's going to be at the most inopportune time. So using reliable equipment operated by people who know how to use it and devoting the time to do it properly with information workflow and the infrastructure, this increases your ability to effectively communicate with your audience.
I usually shorten that to the most expensive part of every production is failure. Next question.
Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas wonders, why is production gear in Canada so darned expensive?
Go ahead, Chris.
This is just the value of $1 is different over there. And also, I don't know if you mean like being in Canada, getting production gear over there, or buying Canadian, like Burl Audio, things like that in America. But yeah, I would probably, all these countries, I mean, like if you go to Europe and try and buy like a Universal Audio, like channel strip, like a $2,000 thing, here's $4,000 there. So I don't think it's just Canada. I think it just depends on where you are. All of these countries all have completely different laws and different taxes and money rates and all that stuff. So,
next question.
Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts wonders, what is your preferred way to get multi-gig Ethernet into an M4 MacBook Pro?
Good, Mickey.
So yeah, for me, the past decade, I've been using a whole bunch of these guys from Sonnet. Apparently, they don't sell what I have. Now they have ones that do 25 gig SFP28. The ones I had in the same box are just 10 gig each connection, but they do have 10 gig SFPs on with a smaller box now, which is looking pretty enticing for me right now. If this might be an option if you're looking for just 10 gig SFP plus, They also have it available in copper RJ45. But if you're just looking for copper RJ45 10 gig, I think at this point in time I'd probably go for the Thunderbolt Pro dock from OWC, which has a whole bunch of connections on it. In addition
Is that the
to
Thunderbolt
10
5
gig
dock?
No, this is just the Thunderbolt 4. But yeah, it does include 10 gig RJ45 if you don't need fiber.
And I think that they do have a Thunderbolt 5 now. So if you want fast drive speed as well,
At the moment, their current generation of Thunderbolt 5 only includes a bunch of Thunderbolt 5 ports on it. So I don't know if
yet.
it includes Ethernet yet.
Got it.
It's something I should check.
Yep. Next question.
Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona is back with this. It's audio day. Are coiled XLRs a bad idea? Not seeing coiled Mogamis in stores and was wanting to get one for my boompole.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so cable management. This is the most important thing ever, right? Your cables are the vascular system to your production. They are paramountly important. So yes, coiling cable is the only correct way to have cables. This is the only way they should be stored when you buy them from the store.
I think what he's talking about is the little coils.
Oh, are you talking about the tiny internal? Oh, got
Inside
you.
a boompole.
Yeah.
Well, okay, got you. Those are great.
Are they?
I don't know. I had to do a really weird. I'm not a TV guy, so
I don't even like coiled IFB cables. Like I don't, or phone cables. I have a little childhood PTSD from, the phone that had the coil. And
I just used one for the first time. I had to go to New York and turn a city bus into a recording studio for some crazy shoots, and so we did have a shotgun mic using one of those, and it seemed like it definitely kind of kept the cable spaghetti a little contained. But I'm not the person to answer this, so I'll get off now.
Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry, not Chris. Mickey.
Yeah, Jack, I'm not sure if you're talking about a coil jumper to go from your sound bag going to the pole, or an internal cable inside the pole itself. Just to give context, typically in location sound, especially ENG style run and gun productions, your sound mixer would be wearing a hopefully nice and comfortable harness that is supportive and carrying a 10, 20, 30, 40 pound bag on their shoulders with that harness. You typically need a jumper to go from your sound bag going to the boom pole. If that is what you're looking for, that jumper cable, I often, my go-to for the past decade and a half has been this coiled cable from Cable Techniques. It has served me pretty well. Like any cable, it goes through wear and tear, and every couple of years I have to replace them out. But I just keep a spare in my Pelican. But if you're talking about the internal coiled cable inside the boom pole itself, go with the coiled cable that the manufacturer of the boom pole sells, because they would have specific diameters of the coil that's meant for that specific model of the boom pole, along with the specific connectors that the XLR attachments at the base of the pole require. Like, for example, the Avalon series or the boom poles from K-Tech have a TA3 connector on them at the end to either go to the butt of the pole or to a side exit, XLR exit on the pole. Saying that though, if you have not worked with internal cables and poles, I would do a lot of practice with that, or of course hire a professional boom operator before you go out in the field with an internal, especially a coiled cable that clacks around inside. It takes very, very specific boom technique to do quick swings. I know Jack is doing unscripted documentary work where you need to be really agile with your pole and oftentimes find yourself doing a lot of quick swings. Doing that with an internal coiled cable takes practice without it causing noise in your production sound.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, what Mickey said is right. Those coiled cables, if they have a standard PVC jacket on it, they can rattle inside. They used to make, and they may have been custom made for the boom manufacturers, coiled cables to do the internal internal cable that are cotton jacketed. I can't find any of them that are freely available with raw ends, because you're going to have to solder those cables inside the boom pole. Obviously, you can't just buy a cable with connectors on the end to use it internally in a boom pole. And as far as your external cable between let's say your over-the-shoulder mixer and the bottom of your boom pole, just bear in mind that a coiled cable puts more stress on the connectors and the cables and the strain relief wherever those cables go into the connectors. So you're going to carry backups, because they're going to fail a lot faster than just a regular straight cable will.
Good, Bill.
I will say I'm using more coiled cables than I ever have before, because generally they're these small ones. In the digital era, this particular one is Lightning to USB-C, but I'm finding, I just did an Amazon look, and over the last couple of years, I've been finding coiled cables for small digital connections, particularly look at the bottom one with the right angle. That kind of adds strain relief. If you know where a monitor or some device is going to be and it's going to be in a fixed position, you don't have to come out from the side and then put that stress on it. You can find them with those right angle connectors. And I'm finding I'm using a lot of these, not for XLR work and not for long runs and not for something heavy that can put stress on cables, but for these little things. I'm going kind of back to coiled cables, and they've been working great for me.
Just hate them. I just hate them. I'm just letting you know, like, I just
To each
hate
their
coiled
own.
cable. Of every cable there is, literally, if I see any coiled cable, I'm like, this is not for me. Next question.
George Papadopoulos in Nicosia. We need to transfer sound from stage to our console/TV studio. The distance is more than 150 meters. What cable do you suggest? Shielded audio cable XLR, Dante, fiber with converters? What solution do you suggest, and which brands for cables and or converters? Thank you.
My God, Chris.
Honestly, there's just so many questions I have to give a good answer. Like, what kind of console? Are these analog? Are they digital? I mean, what protocols do you have accessible for both ends? I mean, are you able to run like fiber? I mean, if you can run like a fiber line or something like that, it's going to be really, really solid, and it's going to be the least amount of stuff versus like running, I don't know how many channels, is this 100 channels of copper you have to run all these things? Also, is this like a permanent install that you're doing in a studio? Is this a one-time gig? All these things, they pay, like, it's just like a huge amount of information to kind of sift through before I would tell you what to do. So I don't know if there's maybe kind of like elaborate the question next time a little more, and we can get a little more specific, because there's really a lot of variables in this. But I would try and really just keep it as clear cut as possible.
Good, Marty.
Yeah, there certainly are questions to ask here. Like, it would be very helpful to know what mixing system you're using, what kind of console. As you're mentioning a TV studio, I will assume that this is a permanent installation. 150 meters is well beyond the distance limit for any kind of category copper cable. And if you're transporting sound and you're working in a TV studio, I'm assuming you also need to transport your camera videos as well over this similar distance. All of this is calling for a fiber solution. Whether and how you're inputting to the fiber from the stage, whether it's a digital stage box that mates with your console, or whether it's a Dante stage box, is a choice that can be made, and that's a lot less consequential than figuring out the actual transport from stage to studio. If you're doing video as well, and assuming you are, then you can use the same fibers, matrixing video, multiple cameras into the same fiber as your audio, and then split them out in the studio. But this is a system design question that really needs to be well considered, not just for what you're doing today, but for what what your studio could possibly be doing over the next few years, because this is considered infrastructure. So think about all of that.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah. If you already, in case you have a Dante network already in place, I would certainly just utilize the Dante network to transport from stage to studio or to control room. But if you do not have one in place, I think there might be a high likelihood that on both the stage side of things and also the studio side of things, you may have MADI capabilities at the audio hardware on both sides. If that's the case, then I would do MADI over fiber optic. If you don't have either, then I would probably work with your IT department to get you a switch that has connectivity through the standard infrastructure in your facility and your campus to get IP connection between both the stage and the control room, the studio, and be able to transport AV over IP. I would recommend Dante, since you'd then be laying the infrastructure responsibilities on the IT department to get that up and running.
Next question.
David Brady in New York City, back again with this one. At my house of worship, we have a TF3 console that we use to get audio into my ATEM. I have a path for computer audio, it's Mitti, to route through the TF to the PA, but how do I get it back into the Blackmagic design unit for use in Zoom?
Mickey?
Okay, my assumption here is that you have either a separate aux or a separate matrix that is used to feed your broadcast mix to the ATEM. If that's the case, then you would need to adjust your sends from the channel or channels that are coming from Mitti. Send those to the appropriate auxes or buses or matrices to get to your ATEM broadcast.
Next question.
Peter Moore, Auckland, New Zealand. A lot of guitar companies are selling direct to the public from their websites. Is this the beginning of the end for brick and mortar music stores? In the last 2 years, 2 have closed here in Auckland. 1 moved and 1 simply closed.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's a lot of stuff up in the air right now. I would say, I know Guitar Center seems to repeat, like just constantly filing for bankruptcy. So I know Sweetwater's doing very well, and they have one solid warehouse, and it's all online. They have no physical stores. So yeah, I would say that it's probably just so cost effective for these big companies. It makes it really hard for small, mom and pop shops to be able to maintain against someone who can buy, 2,000 Les Pauls at a time and just discount them, right?
Yeah, I will say that there is we have a handful of music stores here in Marin that have survived, and they have gone through. It's been up and down, and obviously a lot of mom and pops. Guitar Center, I think, is having some trouble. We still see a couple of them, but there were some other ones that we had that all went under during COVID. Because obviously there wasn't any live things going on. The ones that have survived have focused very, very, very heavily on customer service. So what they have is a lot of regulars that go in there all the time because they have very knowledgeable staff that can answer the questions. They do lots of lessons. They have lesson sessions, like when you're sitting there. But like there's 3 or 4 of them in this county that, within 15 minutes of my house, which is very unusual to have 3 or 4 music stores that are still surviving as mom and pops. And they're all very different. They're their own thing. There's one in Petaluma, there's one in Marin, there's one in San Rafael, and there's one in also in San Rafael. But what's made them work, because I kind of looked at that, is that when you walk up to someone and ask them a question, like my daughter was buying a bass, and when she walked up, the person picked up the bass and played it for her, and talked to her about what that was good and bad about the bass, and what she's going to find in a more expensive bass. The next person picked up a guitar, and started playing it and tuned it really quickly, and then started playing it and started talking about the how far the strings are away from and everything was all, they really knew what they were talking about. And every place that we've gone that has a mom and pop shop, every person there knows a lot about what they're talking about. And then you feel like, oh, I can go in. And if you go in and start asking questions, you generally buy from them. Like you don't talk to them and then go buy. Some people do, but that's really bad form. So but if you're going in and building a relationship with someone and buying stuff from them, and especially what happens is you start buying a couple things from them, and the next thing you know that you're, they're paying. They just know that when you walk in, you're a real customer, and you're going to get even better service. And so I think that that's where we've seen mom and pops succeed. I will agree with you that a lot of them have dropped off. But what we go to, our go-to are those ones that have that the only ones that have survived have had a lot of good service. The ones that didn't survive were mom and pops. And when you walked in, they were a little rough around the edges, and musicians that didn't want to really talk to you. That was a real problem with a bunch of them, and those ones haven't succeeded. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, well, like I said, the thing when buying a musical instrument, you always want to see how it feels, see how it sounds, feel, the feel in your hands, the weight of it, those kind of things you can't really determine when you're buying something over the internet. So they serve their purpose. A lot of people know if you buy from the local brick and mortar, it's going to cost you more than it's going to at the others ordering online, but you're going to pay for that extra service. And like Alex and Mickey were saying, and Chris were saying, I mean, the personality of the people and the knowledge of the people in the store, you can learn a lot from.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like with the stores that have been around the longest here, the stores have sort of become a meeting space or gathering place for sound engineers and also, I guess, musicians as well. But certainly, like there's one pretty large one that's just literally across the street from where my studio is. And the area where my studio is sort of a hub where there are many studios and post houses. And if you go to that shop, you'll certainly run into one or two other sound engineers there just hanging out. You'll bump into someone and then you'll ask, like, have you had lunch?
Sounds like they need a coffee shop. It sounds like we should have, small mom and pop coffee shops have a hard time. Small mom and pop sound companies have a hard time. Maybe you just get both of them together.
Yeah.
I think that might be the answer. Thanks so much for all the great questions. If you're a producer and you ask the questions and we didn't get them in today, if they are, if you ask them inside of Makana, they'll go back to you in your notes, and you can bring them back in. If you ask them via the QR code, they'll go back to the QR code. We'll bring them back in. Just make sure that they're well formed and focused. If you ask for, by the way, as a note, in the QR code, if you say, "Hey, this is a question for this person," it will stay there until that person shows up. so just so you know, like it just hangs in there. We've got a couple of them for Jonas. Hopefully he'll be here on Friday. So they're just waiting for Jonas to come back. So stay tuned for that. Great day for audio. We had an incredible panel here talking about audio and giving you really great input on audio. So thanks so much to the panelists who came in and made this Wednesday such a great audio day. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this all possible. There's so much management and engineering and production that goes into and support that goes into making these happen. And we do it 7 days a week. We haven't missed a day, not a holiday, not a Sunday since March 25th, 2020. So I just want to thank everybody for their contribution. Now, if we'd done this in person, going person to person to person, we would have traveled 36,000 miles. That's 57,000 kilometers, and that is 282 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Those mom and pop shops, there's always some guy trying to play Stairway to Heaven guitar.
No, they're not allowed. They just walk over and grab the guitar.
Stairway to Heaven.
They'll literally grab it. They'll literally just walk over and just grab onto the strings. Like,
does anyone else build a bundle of twist ties? Like, you build the studio and you just have a ton of cables.
No,
twist ties into a large
going to now.
bundle.
Time on your hand making
twist ties, gaff tape. God was in there.
My guys have,
and then
have
I
gaff
need to
tape balls.
clean up a cable. I'll just get from the little massive twist tie.
If you need one, you have a twist. I think you should make it into a bundle, like a ball.
It's like a gaff tape ball that you.
No, but all my tripods have a wrap of about 4 strips of gaff tape around each leg. Just because if I need a little piece of gaff tape, I just want it on the tripod.